Ngannou is back. Watch this video. Hello, welcome to Me Son. Hope you're all well. So this coming weekend, Francis Ngannou is back. He's back to go and fight in the PFL against Ferreira. Now, I've been doing a bit of research in terms of MMA because, look, I always hold my hands up and say I am not the biggest MMA fan. I love stand-up fighting in the MMA, but overall, I'm not as big a fan of the MMA as I am in terms of boxing. However, when you get such a big fight like this, I am the casual, right? I am the casual MMA fan. I absolutely 100% admit it, and I'm not ashamed to admit it as well. But when I do a bit of research on these two fighters, well, Francis Ngannou, we all know, right? Ferreira, in terms of the PFL, how he's been dominating. You look at his fights and you think, he's just a monster. He's just a beast. And he's so long. His limbs are so long. And you wonder whether Francis Ngannou is going to stick a chance against this guy. Francis Ngannou hasn't, he'd had injuries. He's older. He'd had sort of knee injuries and surgery, wasn't it, before he got into the boxing. Yeah, there's two fights. He was 0 for 2 in boxing as well. Lost to Tyson Fury, yes, and lost to AJ emphatically. But now he's coming back. Now he's under PFL. Well, he was always under the PFL as soon as he left the UFC. But this is his first time fighting. So they've been excellent with Francis Ngannou in terms of an organisation, in terms of letting him go off and do his boxing thing. But now he's kind of repaying the organisation. Obviously, Jake Paul is part of that PFL organisation as well. He signed up for a couple of years ago as well. And so they're all doing the press conferences. They're all doing the face-offs, on stage and also in the ring. And there's Jake Paul in there sort of trying to separate them, hoping of hopes that these two don't kick off before the fight. And, I don't think that was ever going to happen because they're way too professional for that. But in terms of, who you going to have for this fight? For me, eyes on, casual fan. Tell me if I'm wrong. Please tell me if I'm wrong, because as I say, I'm only giving you an eyes-on opinion here in terms of the way I've seen Francis Ngannou fight in MMA and the way I've seen this Ferreira fight in MMA as well. All limbs, much more mechanical advantage, and he's a man-mountain, and he's a beast. I've got to say that for me, Ferreira, he's gonna step on Francis Ngannou. He's gonna step all over him. Would I be surprised if Francis Ngannou come out and absolutely stonewall this guy and completely flatline him? No, I wouldn't. But at the same time, I'm just looking at it from a physical point of view, from the way this guy, Ferreira, has absolutely just dominated his fights. And you look at the way Francis Ngannou has fought as well. And you think, wow. I mean, look, boxing comes under a lot of criticism in terms of all the bouts and all that kind of stuff. And the boxing critics always say, well, this should be more like the UFC. But the problems with the MMA world, the MMA is exactly like boxing in terms of the different governing bodies or the different organisations. You've got the UFC, you've got PFL, you've got, what is it in Europe? You've got Octagon, you've got some other ones in Europe as well. You've got in the Far East, you've got one. You've got all these different organisations. So it's exactly like the 4 or 5 bouts now in boxing as well. So in terms of who is number one, who is the heavyweight champion of the world in terms of MMA, well, people always say, oh, it's, Francis Ngannou or it was John Jones. But all they're talking about is UFC. They're never talking about PFL. This is where you're getting the proper crossover in terms of UFC fighter against a PFL fighter or against a one fighter or whatever it is. Say, who is the absolute best? And this, for me, is the one that you're going to think, wow, I cannot believe I'm watching this fight. This is going to be live next weekend. It's on DAZN, I think, worldwide. You'll have to check wherever you are in the world, which is going to be your carrier of choice. But in terms of here in the UK and around Europe, it's going to be DAZN. You can't wait for it, really. I mean, I would be looking at this purely as a casual observer. I'll be looking at it to see, I just want a slugfest. I just want to see two man mountains going at each other and see who's going to really take this to the other fighter and who's going to excel in terms of their fighting ability, in terms of their defensive ability, which body shape is going to work best in terms of length of limbs, all that kind of stuff. I just cannot see Francis Ngannou beating this guy, but I could be absolutely wrong. Listen, I say I'm not an MMA guy. This is just eyes on here, and of what I've seen, Francis Ngannou, an absolute monster in the MMA world, of course, in the UFC, but he's out of that now. Now he's PFL. He's kind of been distracted by the whole boxing thing. He is, how old is he now? He's got to be 40, right? I don't know how Ferreira is, but he's got to be getting on as well. These are two big guys there, and anything can happen. Anything can happen, you know, with this. And this is a great thing to see. I would love to see more of this crossover between PFL or the major organizations. Like, here's your champion, here's our champion, let's get it on, you know, because boxing gets criticized for that. But the way I see it, MMA, UFC, PFL, One, Octagon, whatever, they're all doing the same. They're all just sitting within their own lanes, and they're all calling themselves a world champion. So, well, hold on a minute. You can't be world champion because you haven't fought all these other guys as well. Now we've got a first indication of one who was ex-UFC world champion and one who is a world champion, or who's a man mountain, is a monster, whatever you want to call it. And they're going to go head to head and see what's what. Let us know your thoughts. But all I can say is, cannot wait for this. Cannot wait for this. Francis Ngannou is back, but how well is he going to do? If you like what I do here, well, just keep on watching the videos, and I will catch you again in another video coming very soon. Bye now.